The New York Mets close out the week on a 5-game winning streak. They get great pitching performances out of both of their aces on Sunday to sweep the doubleheader, to sweep the series against the Cleveland Guardians. Francisco Lindor was amazing against his former team. Starling Marte finally saved the extra base hit for the perfect time. We're going to discuss a great weekend of Mets baseball on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, it was an amazing weekend. On Friday night, the Mets had the big walk-off victory. I discussed it all on a bonus episode on Saturday. And then Saturday, we got a rain out. So, doubleheader, Sunday, Verlander going game 2, Scherzer game 1. First thing I tweeted today was over-under 12.5 innings pitched by the Mets co-aces. And the thought process there was, I hope they get 6 out of one and 7 out of the other. Right? That was where my head was at. So when Max Scherzer was around 86 pitches through 6 innings, like, all right, that's going to hit because he's going to get you 7 and Verlander's going to get you at least 6. Well, Scherzer was a little bit gassed, so he came out of the game after 6 innings. Justin Verlander, though, gets 8. Unbelievable pitching performance by Verlander going up against Shane Bieber. We'll discuss the second game in the next segment. First off, have to give Max Scherzer his flowers, give him his credit. He's got the ERA at 4.01 all of a sudden. Crazy how a couple of good outings can turn things around for him. He's starting to look a lot more like himself. We saw him really getting strikes with his breaking balls in this one. The fastball wasn't necessarily there, but at times he still was able to ramp it up a little bit. And, he was mixing his pitches. He felt like he was in complete command. The only time where it looked like Max Scherzer was uncomfortable was when he walked off the mound in the 6th inning looking gassed. Other than that, he looked in great command of all the pitches. And honestly, it gave me a lot of confidence moving forward, at least in his ability to still be that guy. Now, the health, still concerned about, right? Is he going to be able to repeat this every 5th day? Compared to Justin Verlander, who just went out and gave you 8 innings and looked like he's in, mid-season form clearly. There is a little bit of a difference there in the 2 starts that we saw, but the net result was, a combination of 14 out of the 18 innings pitched by your aces, 1 earned run allowed. Now, the offense was pretty good because they went up against 2 really solid pitchers, okay? It's not like the Mets had easy assignments. Tanner Beebe, and you had, of course, the former Cy Young, Shane Bieber. Not easy. The first game, the Mets, they were able to scratch a run in the 4th inning. Eduardo Escobar got the RBI hit. A lot of boneheaded play on both sides, honestly. And Joey Cora sent Gary Sanchez in that 4th inning when he shouldn't have. He got gunned down at the plate. Earlier in that same inning, if I'm not mistaken, Starling Marte got picked off first. The half inning before that, Starling Marte gunned down Josh Bell at second base on just the worst decision I think anyone made on the day, because what was he thinking? He played 4 years with Starling Marte. You know he's got a cannon, and that ball just one hops off the wall. You think he's not going to gun you out at second base. So we saw a little bit of sloppiness, I think, from both sides in that first game. Felt like the second game was kind of tighter across the board, tighter score as far as low scoring, and just a pitcher's duel where it seemed like guys were playing good defense and everything else. We saw some good defense from the Mets in the first game as well. They get that run in the 4th, 6th inning. They scratch another. Gary Sanchez sacrifice fly, his first game in with the Mets. See him get a big RBI. That was nice. Then you had Brandon Nimmo launch a solo homer in the 7th. So everything was coming up Mets, right? Everything. All right, they're just rolling now. Easy victory. Well, 8th inning, not so easy, okay? 7th inning, who's you? Was it Brooks Raley in the 7th? I think it was, Brooks Raley in the 7th. I almost wanted him to go 8, although he ended up closing out the second game. So I guess it was a good thing he wasn't used twice. They get him through the 7th. They go to Adam Ottavino in the 8th, and Otto did not have it. Gave up a leadoff double. Got a couple of outs, but one of them plated a run. Then he gave up another double, then a base hit. And then, home run. And actually, it wasn't him that gave up the homer, David Robertson, but it was his runs that came across. So Robertson gave up 1. Ottavino gave up 3. The Mets had a 3-0 lead. All of a sudden, it flipped on its head, and they were losing by 1 going into the bottom of the 8th. But this is the new Never Say Die Mets that are back. And just as quickly as they gave up the lead, they grabbed it right back. Brett Beatty draws a leadoff walk. And Starling Marte, who had an extra base hit since the beginning of April, I think it was 100 plate appearances or something like that, where Marte had failed to get the extra base hits. He was still getting hits recently. He started to come out of it a little bit. He's starting to have a shorter bat to the ball. We're seeing signs. But launching the baseball, not something we had seen. Then he gets a fastball right down Broadway. I mean, you could not have got a better pitch to hit. And he did what you're supposed to do with it. Put it in the seats. And the New York Mets take a lead. And Robertson able to hang on to it in that 9th inning. He's got a 1.27 ERA. He's got 2 wins. How many saves does David Robertson have right now? He's been great. Even though he gave up a home run, I will note that home run was to Jose Ramirez. And if that's why you can look at that and say, all right, a lot of guys are going to give up a home run to Jose Ramirez. It wasn't even a horrible pitch, honestly. Breaking ball, bottom part of the zone. He just put a great swing on. 8 saves so far this year for the Mets closer without Edwin Diaz. So overall, just a fantastic game 1. Once again, show that bite. Be able to put up 5 runs as a lineup to get 6 scoreless from Scherzer. And it set them up to try to sweep the doubleheader in game 2 when Justin Verlander was up to the task. To discuss his performance in just a minute. Before we do, though, today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right, so the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage, looking for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. As I just said, giving up home runs to Jose Ramirez is nothing to be ashamed of. So when Justin Verlander gives up a homer to Jose Ramirez in the first inning, you tip your cap. After that, though, Justin Verlander gave up 2 singles, and that was it. And he made it through 8 innings for the New York Mets. A amazing performance by Verlander. 5 strikeouts, but he was pitching to contact, trying to give the Mets length. Great to see a veteran who can just do that. He got through 8 innings with 98 pitches. It was remarkable. And Brooks Raley only needed 5 to get through the 9th inning. 1, 2, 3. I think he only threw 9 pitches in the first game. So imagine that. 2 innings and 14 pitches for Brooks Raley. Don't quote me on that 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was like 9 and then 5 in this second game. But Verlander's the story because he was Cy Young from last year, Justin Verlander. If they're going to get that guy moving forward, I'm not going to say that this is the greatest lineup in the world. The Guardians are struggling as a team offensively. But part of being a Cy Young, or part of being an ace like Scherzer was last year, it's that when you face these bad teams, you don't give up anything. You are able to, yes, maybe you give up a home run to the one, superstar in Jose Ramirez, but you're able to carve up the rest of the lineup. You're able to get length out of your starters so the bullpen can take a breather, especially in the second game of a doubleheader. what we just saw from Justin Verlander is incredibly encouraging because I feel like even if we see Scherzer in and out of this rotation, that becomes kind of his season. He's the guy that just is constantly laboring. If you have Justin Verlander at the peak of his powers pitching like he did last year, we had a 1.75 ERA, and he looks like he did today, and you have that tone setter atop your rotation every fifth day, obviously it's better if you have what we've seen the last couple turns, the way that Scherzer has actually thrown the ball really well, and you have both of them, okay? But to me, the thing about having these two aces, it was always the fact that for the most part, you would expect to have one at all times. And the Mets just haven't had that this year. And then your hope is you have two most of the time. And more importantly than anything, you have two and have two when they're right in October. That's again also where I kind of look at Scherzer and say, if you got to manage that situation, by all means. It's kind of funny because watching Scherzer get off the mound, look, he's had between the suspension, the neck stuff, the shoulder, everything that he's had this season, or they had a back issue. I mean, look, he has had a rough year. Okay, so when he comes off the mound looking exhausted through 6 and 86 pitches, you do have to kind of understand where he's at. Whereas Justin Verlander, he had the minor injury at the beginning of the year that they were patient with it. He rehabbed it properly. He took all the right steps to get right. And he right now just looks like the younger pitcher, which he's not, but he's also fresh off of Tommy John, now in the second full year pitching after it. So his elbow is younger than Max Scherzer's. And it looked like it, today, just to see him so efficiently get through that game and to seemingly still be so strong. I mean, I feel like if they asked Justin Verlander to get the last 3 outs, he would have gone out there and retired the sign as quickly as Brooks Raley did. But, great performance by the two aces. When it comes to the Mets offense, it wasn't really there because they were going up against a great pitcher on the other side, Shane Bieber, and there is no shame in struggling to score runs off him. There's not. But Francisco Lindor continues a remarkable series that he had against his former team. This series altogether, he went 5 for 14, double, home run, 2 RBIs, 3 runs scored. One of those RBIs was the game winner, the walk-off on Friday. The other one was his solo home run to tie it in the 6th inning. So clutch hits after clutch hits. Anyone has a referendum about that trade. Anyone's still worried about, did the Mets make the right move in trading for Linton? Man, you got to quiet that noise at this point. 101 win season with him being, your best player last year, almost a 7-win season when it comes to Fangraphs wins above replacement. You go from that type of a year to the consistent defense you're seeing now without the shift. He has just been the anchor for the Mets on that side. And, offensively, I know it's been a little bit of a struggle, but this is a series that maybe he starts to come out of it. And, it's just the perfect time for it. So we'll see if they can go on a little run here. And I think Lindor is going to be a big part of it. Now, you had Francisco Alvarez also get a clutch hit. Should note that one. Led off the bottom of the 8th inning with a knock. He got substituted for Starling Marte coming in to pinch run. He almost got picked off again. I kind of thought he did on replay review, but he was, I guess, just in there. There wasn't enough video evidence to overturn it. Marte got to third base on a base hit from Lindor to put him in scoring position. And then Jeff McNeil, sac fly, and the Mets are able to win the game 2-1 because, again, Brooks Raley came in and got that save. If you look at this team, look at this lineup over the last 7 days, okay? A lot that you can really, really love. Pete Alonso, the 4 home runs, the 10 RBIs. Ironically enough, he's 6 for 29 with 1 walk. He's actually in 207 in his last 7 games played, 233 on base. But the 621 slug is going to play. Francisco Alvarez hit 333 over his last 5 games played. This is over the last 7 days. 474 on base, 800 slug. That's a 1274 OPS to lead the Mets. He's been awesome. Brett Baty, 2 home runs, last 6 games played, 333 average, 429 on base, 722 slug. So he's got the OPS over at 1151. Eduardo Escobar, 6 games played, getting some time at second base, and also coming in and being a pinch runner at times or being a defensive replacement. He's getting, a lot of play at the bench. And honestly, he's looked pretty good at second base. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I didn't think he could play the position still. I think he's looked fine over there. As your backup second baseman, I think it's a fine spot for him. He's hitting 385 lately. It's 13 at-bats, but still 467 on base, 2 walks, 5 hits in his 13 at-bats, 15 plate appearances. That's pretty nice work from Escobar. Got Lindor in the last 7, hitting over 300 with that home run today. And then you have Starling Marte, was the guy I really wanted to get to down here. 316 average, 381 on base, 474 slug with the home run, 855 OPS lately. They need him to get back to being the guy he was last year. And we're starting to see it. And the funny thing is, at the same time, you're seeing Mark Canha still struggle. And you're seeing Brandon Nimmo really just going through it again. But it's fine because you have enough of the other guys contributing that it's allowing those guys who are struggling a little bit of a wider berth. And so I guess the one guy to look at the bottom of the OPS books here for the Mets, it's Vogelback. Really, really rough at-bats from him lately. You wonder if that's going to necessitate a move at some point. Him, Tommy Pham, they're not getting a ton of production from those guys. And Mark Canha, obviously, as well. That's where you wonder what the Mets ultimately do. I think if Escobar keeps swinging the way he does, you're going to just continue to see Buck Showalter sliding him into the lineup at second base and putting McNeil out in the outfield. Everyone wants to talk about Ronnie Mauricio in AAA still, but if Eduardo Escobar is going to hit like this, he's going to force some playing time. And what I love about it is it's no longer seemingly going to affect Brett Baty. The fact that Brett Baty started both games of the doubleheader today and played third base where he has looked great defensively, that to me is the best sign for things ahead, to see them kind of lean into that and start to look at him as more and more of an everyday player. That bodes well for the future for this Mets team. Speaking of future for this Mets team, have we looked at the standings in a while? We haven't. I want to do that, and I want to speak about what we saw this past week, at a macro level, and why I believe this was not only the most important week of the season, but a turning point that could put them right back into the thick of this race in the NL East, where they actually can contend with the Atlanta Braves. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Sorare. Our new sponsor, Sorare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, Sorare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. Sorare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include Sorare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. Head to Sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com. To draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's Sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. All right, if we take a look at the standings right now, the New York Mets are 5 games back of the Atlanta Braves. The Braves are 29-17, Mets 25-23. Now, I'll be honest, I am not a big standings in May guy. I haven't looked at these in weeks, partially because the Mets were free falling, but also because I just don't really start to pay attention to the standings day in and day out, where I'm really checking it religiously until we get into July, August trade deadline time. That's where my focus goes more on the standings. But it is interesting because I literally at the beginning of last week said that the Mets aren't competing with the Braves in this division anymore. The way that they were playing, I I was on the Just Baseball show. They asked me on because they just wanted to basically rip on the Mets. And you're welcome, Mets fans, because I stood there, I took it on the chin, and that was 7 o'clock on Wednesday, I believe, at the beginning of the turnaround. It was the Senga start, was when I was on that show. So, hey, I'm not saying that it's all due to me that the Mets just won 5 in a row. But I will say that it's all due to the jerks of the Just Baseball show that just brought me on to make fun of me. And guess what? Who's laughing now? On that show, I said, I don't know if the Mets are going to compete with the Braves' toughest division, but I felt like this is going to still be a Mets team that would grab a wild card spot, and that it might be the better spot for them in the sense that, maybe that pressure of competing for the division, which seemed to drain the Mets last year, is something that they didn't need to go through. And maybe it's just better to be the fresh and loose team that grabs a wild card spot like the Phillies did last year. But also, you can't concede the division in May like maybe I was trying to when everything was horrible. And you got to still go for it. Obviously, you want to see the Mets fight it out with the Braves. You want to see the Mets push them. And you want to see the Mets, maybe grab the division and grab a bye and escape that wild card round altogether is really the hope. And when we look at the Braves schedule coming up here, the Mets could be right neck and neck with them by the time they square off again. Okay, the Mets got 3 in Chicago. Okay, they got the day off on Monday. Then they got 3 in Colorado. They then come home and face the Phillies for 3. Then they got the Blue Jays for 3. Those are tough games. And then they go to Atlanta to play the Braves, June 6th through the 8th. Okay, but in that time, if the Mets win all those series, if the Mets win against the Cubs, the Rockies, the Phillies, and the Blue Jays, and they just keep a series streak alive where they're winning 2 out of every 3, and the Braves lose a little bit, which, hey, the Braves can beat anybody, but they are playing a series against the Dodgers coming up here, the next series. And then they got the Phillies for 4, Athletics for 3, but then they go to Arizona, and Arizona's been a feisty team this year. They got 3 in Arizona. My point of all of this is we could be looking at the Mets. Let's just say they get 3 games on the Braves. They pick up 3 over the next couple weeks here before they square off. And then they beat the Braves in that series. All of a sudden, this division could be neck and neck again. So that's why during most of the free fall, I continued to preach optimism until it got to the point where there was very little to be optimistic about. But every step of the way, the thing I always came back to was starting pitching. Getting consistent starting pitching. Could the Mets ever get to that point where you trusted their starting rotation? And what we just saw today was the biggest sign of encouragement of anything that happened. As much as you could talk about the baby Mets breaking out, the walk-off win, the comebacks, the home runs, all of that stuff that turned this season around for this Mets team and carried into the doubleheader today. As great as all of it was, as great as it is to see Brett Beatty play well, and see Francisco Alvarez really winning the starting catching job, to see Mark Vientos come up clutch in big spots, to see Pete Alonso have a home run streak where he homers in 4 consecutive games with all of them being clutch, to see Lindor get a walk-off hit, to see Starling Marte to have a clutch game-winning home run after he had an extra base hit in over a month. As much as all of that stuff is encouraging, nothing is more encouraging than the start of the 5-game winning streak and the end of the 5-game winning streak. Kodai Senga being lights out, Scherzer and Verlander being lights out on the back end of it. And what we saw in the middle, Tyler McGill, quality start, get you through 6. And as much as you want to knock Carlos Carrasco, I think there was some things that you like about his start, the way he pitched after the rough first inning, the 3-run homer that he allowed. After that, yes, he did give up 5 runs, but he got you through 5, and I feel like he's going to be better and more consistent than certainly David Peterson was, and more than you would have been getting from a Joey Lucchesi or a Jose Butto or anyone else. So the Mets have a rotation now, and we'll see how this rotation holds up over the next couple of weeks. But if it can hold true, and they can take their every 5th turn, I really think the Mets can stack victories, especially with all of that excitement that the lineup now possesses. So we'll see how this carries over moving forward. The last little note, since we're on the starting pitching, Jose Quintana seems like a month to 6 weeks. He could be back, but he's throwing now, so now he's got to go through his whole throwing program, so that was really good. And David Peterson, take it for what you will, was lights out to start in AAA Syracuse. 8 innings for Peterson with, I believe it was 9 strikeouts to 3 walks. Building block for him moving forward. We'll see if he can turn his season around. I think he'll be in AAA, working things out for a pretty long while, unless the Mets just need a spot starter. Anyway, though, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets for all you everydayers. Tomorrow's show, we'll be previewing Mets versus Cubs. I might dig into Jeff McNeil. We'll wait and see what I decide. I think Jeff McNeil deserves some recognition. He's starting to turn the season around. I'm going to do a little dive into the stats and see what I find. Also, I probably want to talk about Brett Beatty's defense. You're going to have to tune in to find out. As always, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter, @FinkelsteinRyan. And follow the show, Locked On Mets.